Lord Greaves said he feared that Brexit, 2 weeks away today, could unleash actions reminiscent of things happening in Germany in the early 1930s. Lord Greaves is in the studio with me now. What sort of things do you fear, Lord Greaves? Good morning.
Yes, some people thought I'd said that and were upset.
Well, you did say that.
No, I didn't say that.
OK, let's play. OK, Lord Greaves, we'll play you the clip. Listen to this.
I am fearful that on the 31st of January, some things may happen in some places which could be reminiscent of things happening in Germany in the early 1930s.
Pete,
I am worried about this.
I repeat my question, what could be reminiscent?
I was referring to pre-Nazi Germany in the circumstances before the
Yes,
before the Nazis
so what
took
could
over.
happen here that happened in Germany in the early 1930s?
What happened after the referendum was that there was an increase in incidents. Some were violent incidents, a lot were just rudeness and generally antisocial behaviour towards European citizens living in this country. The 3.5 to 4 million European citizens live in this country at the moment, as of right, as any of us can anywhere in Europe at the moment, anywhere in the EU, and work here. And quite a few of them, not everybody, but quite a few of the citizens I know have told me that they are experiencing a different feeling, a different attitude, a different sense of whether or not they belong in this country,
right?
As far as the people are concerned. And that is what I am concerned about.
You're likening inexcusable rudeness to Europeans living in this country to Nazi Germany. How many people did the Nazis murder, Lord
No,
Greaves?
I'm not likening that at all.
You talked of 1930, Germany in the early 1930s.
Yeah.
So rudeness is like Nazi Germany, is it?
No, I didn't say that. And I want to be very clear.
Have I got to play it to you again?
No, you can play it again, and I accept it, and I would say it again. I'm talking about the end of the 1920s and the early 1930s, before Hitler took power, when
Britain's like that, is it?
The German friends I've got tell me that what they sense here feels like what their parents told them it was like at that time in Germany. But the really important thing is that a lot of the European citizens who live here are feeling insecure, they're feeling extremely unhappy, some of them are feeling distressed, they are experiencing week by week a different attitude towards them. They know that after the referendum there were instances of violence. I know of an instance where windows were put through and another one where paint was daubed on a house and so on. And the concern is that we've really got to make sure that that sort of thing doesn't happen as a result of the celebrations that many people quite rightly will have when we leave the European Union, because they've been campaigning for it, do not get out of hand, and a small minority of people do not turn violent and turn nasty.
You go on to say there are many, many people in this country who are full of dismay and distress. People are crying at night when they go to sleep. They're crying in the morning when they wake up. You know those people, do you?
I'm talking about European citizens, and I know some who tell me that...
Who go to bed crying and wake up crying.
Well, not every day necessarily, but are feeling extremely unhappy.
No, you didn't say that.
I know some.
No, they cry at night when they go to sleep. They cry in the morning when they wake up. How many do you know?
I know enough to... What's many enough? European citizens do
how many people do you know who cry when they go to bed at night, when they go to sleep, and they cry in the morning? How many people do you know?
Personally, a handful, and I also...
A handful? You know half a dozen, do you?
Yes.
I see.
And also...
How many marriages do you know have broken up? Apparently marriages are breaking up over Brexit.
I know of 3 or 4 that have broken up.
3 or 4 marriages have broken up. Give me the instances. Why did Brexit end those marriages?
Because European citizens no longer feel that this is a country in which they wish to live, because they feel hurt. They came here, they thought it was a generous, open-minded, outward-looking country.
Are we not a generous, open-minded, outward-looking country?
I think I think we are, as far as that is concerned, we are getting worse.
Right.
We're not as generous and open-minded and outward-looking.
How helpful is it that a peer of the realm describes it as like being 1930s Germany? How open-minded is that?
Well, I'm describing the fears that I have got.
How open-minded is that?
Open-minded. I think it's open-minded.
To describe Britain as like 1930, that's being helpful, is it?
I'm saying that we've got to prevent that happening.
No, I've got to play it to you again, reminiscent of things happening in Germany. That's being helpful, is it?
Well, I think it is. What I was trying to do was to persuade the government not to be triumphalist. The real danger...
It doesn't come into it at all. You've not mentioned that at all.
Well, I do. If you read the whole speech that I made, you would find I talked about that. I talked specifically about the ridiculous proposals for Big Bang Bongs, or whatever they're called.
Why is that ridiculous?
Because it's triumphalist.
Why?
Well...
Is it not marking a moment in history? When they sound on Remembrance Sunday, is that triumphalist?
But the whole country is united behind that. As far as Brexit is
respectfully,
concerned,
it's not. Respectfully, it's not. There are pacifists actually
there are indeed
who are against war, so they're not all behind it. Lord Graves.
But people
and there are some people who don't celebrate the same year that I sense you and I do. They live by a different calendar. But we allow it to sound for New Year's Eve. We allow it to sign for Remembrance Sunday. Why can't we allow it to sign to mark a change in history?
Because it's a change in history which has divided this country into two. This country is totally divided. It was divided at the referendum. It's got more divided since then. You've only got to talk to people. You've only got to look at social media to see that...
You take all your cues from social media,
I don't.
You talk to these Europeans who can't sleep at night, which is very sad.
Hi there, Mr. Hancock. You might know my father, Dr. Chowdhury. When he was unwell, he wrote an open letter to the Prime Minister pleading for more PPE for NHS frontline workers. It was a request that was ignored. 2 weeks later, he passed away, and since then, over 100 NHS and social care workers have passed away from contracting the virus. Do you regret not taking my dad's concerns, my 11-year-old sister's dad's concerns, and my wife's husband's concerns seriously enough? My dad that we've all lost.
I'm really sorry about your dad's death, and I've seen the comments that you've made and what you've said in public, and I think it's very brave of you to be speaking out in public. We took very, very seriously what your father said, and we've been working round the clock to ensure that there's enough protective equipment. And in the case of anybody who works in the NHS or in social care and has died from coronavirus, we look into it in each case to find out the reasons where they might have caught it and what lessons we can learn. So absolutely, it's very important that these lessons are learnt and we find out what we need to find out. But what I can assure you, Intisar, is that we took very seriously your father's concerns that he raised, and we are absolutely doing everything we can to get people the PPE they need.
Do you accept now that mistakes were made, notwithstanding the fact, as you say, you've moved about 1 billion bits of kit to 58,000 different sites, which is no mean feat? Do you accept, Mr. Secretary of State, that mistakes were made?
Well,
I mean, Emmanuel Macron can in France. Can you be big enough to say, yes, we could have done things differently and we could have done them better?
Well, there are things that we've changed as we've gone through, both because we've learnt more things about the virus, also because things didn't work out as we expected. I'll give you one example: is that we changed the rules on who can go to a funeral. I saw the body of the 13-year-old boy who died being laid to rest by 4 men in hazmat suits, and his family felt that they shouldn't go to the funeral. And I thought that was awful. And that was because the way that the guidance had been written, it implied that even the close family shouldn't go. And so we changed the guidance. So yes, we're constantly looking and learning for what we can do better.
But will you accept, lastly on this point, the provision of kit, mistakes were made, or you still say they weren't?
Well, what I say on the provision of protective equipment is that a huge amount of people are doing everything they can and have done since the start of the crisis. Okay. And, of course, this is a very, very complicated logistical effort, but I don't want to play down the enormous efforts of many thousands of people who are working every hour that there is to try to solve the problem.
Final word to you, Intisar, before I move on, briefly, if you could, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Hancock, the public is not expecting the government to handle this perfectly. None of us are expecting perfection. We're expecting progression. We just want you to openly acknowledge that there have been mistakes in handling the virus, especially to me and to so many families that have really lost loved ones as a result of this virus, and probably as a result of the government not handling it seriously enough. Openly acknowledging a mistake is not an admission of guilt. It's genuinely just making you seem more human. So could you please do that for me? Maybe today, we're at a press conference today, maybe a public apology.
I think that it is very important that we're constantly learning about how to do these things better, and I think listening to the voices on the front line is a very, very important part of how we improve.
All right. Well, we have tried. Intisar, condolences, and I'm sure I pass them on from Mr. Hancock as well to you and your family and what you're going through at the moment.
Absolutely.
Vic, what happened to you? Good morning.
Feeling a bit grim last week. I've got a dry cough. Feeling achy, splitting headache, and my sense of taste had gone a bit weird. I thought I need a test.
Dead right.
So I went on the government website, and they wanted me to... What was your previous record? 250 miles?
Yeah, well, that seems to be the media record. Yeah.
All right, 341 miles. Nottingham to Dundee.
No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but that is absolutely absurd. Nottingham,
it is.
And thank you for looking up. 341 miles.
Well, I thought, shall I do this? And I went onto Google Maps, 341 miles. I thought, no, I think I'll pass that. I'll take some paracetamol. Over the week, the symptoms did subside, so I've kicked that one into touch. Yeah, I like Scotland, but no, 341 miles was a bit too much.
When was this, did you say? When did you fall ill?
Last Tuesday I started to feel a bit grim.
Last Tuesday.
And I went onto the website a couple of days later on the Thursday, and I just couldn't believe it. And so, like a lot of people, I thought, I must have put my address in wrong. I must have put the postcode wrong. So I put it again. Yeah, it was Dundee again, 341 miles. I couldn't believe it.
I'm glad to hear you're on the mend. I don't think anybody... I mean, and when I said the media, what I meant was there's no newspaper had got above 250 miles, no media outlet. So I think very kindly, Nick, you've landed us in the first spot. We take the gold medal unless you can beat 341 miles, Nottingham to Dundee. How rich. Of a Land Rover Discovery, such as Mr. Cummings drives, is around 524 miles, so it would not have been able to get to and from Durham. So he has had to get petrol somewhere, hasn't he, Mr. Gove?
I think he got petrol on the way back.
Right, so then he would have risked infecting other people?
No, because by the time he drove back, he was no longer infectious, and indeed medical advice had been given saying that he could return to work.
Right. Would you go on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight?
I have, on occasions in the past, driven with my wife in order to make sure that... what's the right way of putting it?
I'm staggered. I don't know how you're going to get out of this one, but it's going to be fun.
No. I think people who know me would know that I'm not an authority on driving, and that I'm not the best person in the world to ask detailed questions about driving.
No, I merely asked you if you've ever been on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight, and you said you had. I mean, why not go to Specsavers?
Well, I've subsequently got in. No, the point that I was seeking to make is that I'm not an authority on driving. As someone who took 7 attempts to pass their driving test.
Here today, there's a new time is running out. Where do you see the talks? Where do you see UK at the end of this period, at the end of the year? Secretary of State.
Well, I mean, the Prime Minister has been very clear on this, which is that we're now preparing to leave on Australia terms, so WTO plus some sort of additional measures. But, of course, ultimately this is up to the European Union. We've always been very clear that we want to leave on a Canada-style trade deal. That is something that the EU has with other friendly nations. That's what we want. But it was pretty clear on Thursday that actually that's not the direction it was going on. And that's why the Prime Minister said, unless the EU substantially change their approach to this and we get into the detailed legal text and negotiations...
What's the difference between an Australia deal and a no deal?
We already have a deal, of course, because we've got a withdrawal agreement.
No, but going forward.
Well, we're going forward. So,
what would be the difference between an Australia deal and a no deal, Secretary of State?
I mean, the Australia deal is the deal that you have with countries where you're predominantly working on a sort of WTO basis. So
it's a no deal.
Well, I mean, depends. I mean, you can use the phrase no deal, but the point is that it is a deal.
But I wonder why we keep hearing Australia deal, because I don't see any point of distinction between Australia deal and no deal.
Again, it's.
Let me do it another way. There is no difference.
Well, Nick. So again,
persuade me otherwise.
It's a question of semantics at the end of the day, sure. But what I'm saying to you is that
we've got the future of this nation, and it's resting on semantics. That's worrying,
there are two very clear approaches. There are two very clear approaches to this. We can either go down the route of doing the sort of arrangement that the EU has with Australia. The other is that we can do it down the Canada route. Now, that's been our preference. That's what we have said. But ultimately, we have to prepare. And in terms of the
there is no difference, is there, between no deal and Australia? Let's just nail that.
Can I address this point about what happens in terms of the end of the year? So I completely understand that businesses have been preparing. We want businesses that have not yet had a chance to do that to do so. So we're launching more sort of campaigns to ensure that people are informed. You can go to gov.uk transition to see what changes you need to make. And we are proactively now talking to businesses to ensure that they understand what they need to prepare for. It doesn't matter whether we go under Australia style or Canada style.
Well, no, Australia
there
is no
are going to be changes.
We should stop saying Australia, shouldn't we? Because
no, I don't think we should stop saying Australia. I mean, it's people. Well, Nick, people will understand very clearly what that means.
What if you can't tell them why?
Well, I'm telling you that it is on...
Sorry, if the Secretary of State for Business can't tell the difference between Australia and no deal, why should my listeners?
Nick, so as I said to you, you can either go down a WTO route, or you can go down the route...
Otherwise known as Australia?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can go down the route of Canada, which is where we want to get to.
Even your own father has broken the restrictions by going to Greece. Listen, what will you say to your father?
I think you really ought to raise that with him.
A view.
My view is that the overwhelming majority of the British people have understood what needs to be done.
You asked me to raise it with your dad. I put it to you that you're slightly closer to him, although I've had the privilege of meeting him. You're closer to him than I.
My dear Nick,
what will you say to your father?
I am not going to get into details of family conversations. I'm not going to dig into details.
Are you disappointed?
I think that I'm very, very pleased that the overwhelming majority of the British population...
But are you disappointed with Dad?
I'm very pleased that the overwhelming majority of the British population...
You're not going to give me one comment on Dad?
The overwhelming majority of... No.
Why?
Because
Can all men in their late 70s go off to Greece,
I think the overwhelming majority
of
the British population have understood what needs to be done and have been very prudent, and that is the right thing to do. And the results are there to be seen.
And lastly... Did the fact that Britain is in the process of and has Brexited, did that mean we got the vaccination, a world first, ahead of the US and the EU? Yes or no, do you believe, Secretary of State?
Well, I just reckon we've got the very best people in this country, and we've obviously got the best medical regulators, much better than the French have, much better than the Belgians have, much better than the Americans have. That doesn't surprise me at all, because we're a much better country than every single one of them.
So it did help that we've Brexited finally, Secretary.
I think just being able to get on with things, deliver it, and the brilliant people in our medical regulator making it happen means that people in this country are going to be the first ones in the Western world to get that Pfizer, or in the world to get that Pfizer vaccine. Real competitive advantage. But do you know who it's down to? It's down to those brilliant clinicians in the regulator who's made it happen so fast. So our thanks go out to them, because by doing what they've done, they're going to have saved lives.
Jan, what would you say to Prince Andrew? This is an ugly one, isn't it?
It's very ugly, and yes, I think he should come forward to be questioned. But equally, I think that the lady that absconded to New York, and they've refused to bring her back for reckoning in England, that should be sorted as well.
Is this Anne Secoulis, who's wanted in connection with the death of Harry Dunn, the motorcyclist?
They cannot have double standards. If they want this family to not have justice, to live with the fact that he was unlawfully killed by somebody that absconded rather than face the music, then I think America can't have it both ways.
But then lastly, the way I see it is they both should go. He should go there, and she should come here and face the proverbial music.
Yes, and it has to be a two-way street. I think I don't know words.
If I were to say to you Operation or Exercise Cygnus, would you know, that's Cygnus with a C, not sickness, would you know what I'm talking, do you know what I'd be speaking?
Could you tell me what you're talking about?
This is not under your watch, but this is in 2016 when the Conservative government ran a pandemic trial or dummy run called Exercise Cygnus. Ministers then were warned 4 years ago that Britain would be overwhelmed amid a shortage of critical care beds, ventilators, more capacity and, here we go again, PPE or protective kits. The three-day dry run tested how hospitals and other services would cope. Whitehall officials deemed the findings too sensitive to be made public, and they remain classified. Not you personally, but a previous Conservative government knew this was coming and did nothing, didn't they?
I think that actually what you can see from that is that we are well prepared.
No. Let's talk about what happened. Not you personally. I know you weren't personally in government, but the Conservatives were. 4 years ago, they had a dummy run, a trial, a test. It was a disaster, and nothing was done by the Conservative government, was it?
But you've made a statement which I haven't heard anyone else say about that exercise.
What have you heard about it? It was a glowing success, was it, Minister?
Well, I will, if you'll give me a minute to speak. So the important thing is that we run pandemic flu exercises. That, for instance, in every area where you have a local resilience forum, they all had pandemic flu plans, which means that to be ready to cope with coronavirus, it's been a matter of updating those plans for the specifics that we know about coronavirus, rather than starting from scratch, which has put us in a good place. On the things like the NHS capacity and the number of
I'm so sorry, I have to
ventilators,
challenge you there. You think we're in a good place?
So we are much better prepared than many other countries around the world because of the preparations that had already been made and the exercises that had been carried out. Can I just come to your point about the ventilators and the NHS capacity? So at the moment, the NHS has 8,000 ventilators, 8,000 more coming online shortly, and thousands more to be produced thanks to fantastic response to the call for manufacturers to support it. Hand in hand with all the work that's going on is about, on the one hand, increasing the NHS capacity to look after people who are sick, while together with the guidance to stay at home and on social distancing so that we reduce the spread of the virus and enable the NHS to cope with the number of people who will need its care. And this is a huge national effort, really important. Everyone can play their part, whether it's staying from home, working from home when you can, or those fantastic doctors, nurses and social care workers who are at the front line.
Yes, but they spent 3 days going through this exercise, which showed holes all over the place, and nothing, not by you, I say again, and nothing was done by the Conservative government. Instead, the austerity continued. How do you defend that, Minister?
It's not clear at all to me where you're getting your information from. And
I'm
whether
staggered that you're the Care Minister and your staff didn't. This was the front page of yesterday's Sunday Telegraph. I am staggered. I don't know how many people you have working in your department that no one told the Care Minister. How do you feel that the journalists know about it and the Care Minister doesn't, Minister? How do you feel?
So you're making statements about something.
Why don't you go read the article?
About information that's not even in the public domain.
Hang on, the Sunday Telegraph. What are you talking about? It was available yesterday, Minister. I don't expect you necessarily to, but I don't know what your press team were doing if they didn't think to tell the Care Minister that Exercise Cygnus was an unmitigated disaster in the field of health and public care, and you didn't even know.
As you yourself said a minute ago, that those, not all the information from that particular exercise is in the public domain. But the important thing is that these exercises have been carried out. The important thing is, for instance, for the question about the supply of PPE, that we would not be able to distribute 170 million items of PPE around the country if we didn't have a huge stock ready for a pandemic of PPE in the first place. That puts us in a good position. I don't suggest for a moment it makes it easy. It's a huge logistical exercise, but it does mean, because exercise has been carried out, because we have pandemic flu stocks, because every area has a pandemic flu plan, it has put us in a place from which we can then build in order to make sure that we have a strongest possible response to coronavirus.
So let's hear someone who actually is with Extinction Rebellion, Paul Stevens, who served as a police officer with the Met for more than 3 decades. You're a member of the Extinction Rebellion Police Liaison Team. You're a former detective sergeant in the Met. And I know this much, you're in the studio. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Nick.
What do Extinction Rebellion want?
Well, we want 3 demands. We want the government to tell the truth. So the climate emergency is facing us, and Often they are not telling the truth. They are greenwashing the information that's coming out.
What do you mean by greenwashing? Explain that to my listeners.
It's being like,
obviously whitewashing.
For example, if you look at the Prime Minister's latest speech in the Houses of Parliament, he said that he was very proud of the 40% reduction in carbon that the UK had put out. That because we're an island, that doesn't include aviation, that doesn't include shipping, and it doesn't include all the products that we now import that are made in China using coal to produce them. So the actual figure is about 10% since the 1990. And the UN says in order for us to keep, for a 50-50 chance of keeping to 1.5 degrees, we need to reduce by 8% per year. And this is 10% over 30 years. So it's not good enough, and he's not being clear about that. And I think he should go to the people and say, this is the problem. It is a major problem. It threatens our lives, our food, our water, and we need to do something about it. I'm very proud to be British, and in the war we turned pram factories into Spitfire factories. We need that kind of spirit. We need to lead the world. And I think Boris has got a chance. He did it with the Olympics. He should do this with COP26. He should get us together and really lead the world in making the changes necessary.
And if the United Kingdom was to achieve that, what about other countries? I think countries such as India and China, they're not necessarily going to follow in the same way.
Obviously, but you can't tell someone to take their feet off the seat in a train if you've got your feet on the seat. You have to take the lead. You have to give an example. So, and we produce most of the carbon in the atmosphere today, and we taught other countries how to do it with steam and...
But we're not on the same level as China, are we?
I think you'll find that you personally produce much, much more carbon than the average Chinaman. So per capita, it's like 3, 4, 5 times.
But there's 1.7 billion of those.
Of course, and they are making
67 million of 70 million of ours.
They are making changes, and when they start to make changes, because of their system of government, they're going to change very quickly. I hope.
What are the plans for May?
We're going to have a rebellion on May the 23rd. Our people are trying very hard to think of creative ways to bring the message to the media that doesn't create disruption. I'm not for disruption. We've tried every avenue up to now. Unfortunately, the disruption we have created worked. I mean, I'm sitting here. If I'd rang up LBC a year ago and said there is a massive crisis...
I don't think you can count that argument any longer, for goodness
Why?
sake. David Attenborough was alongside Boris Johnson at this conference yesterday.
Yep.
Are you honestly telling me you think people out there are not aware of the issues of climate change?
Some people are not. Some people come up to us in the street while we're sitting in the road and they say, why are you doing this? Who's Extinction Rebellion? Many people say that.
So you want to be by peaceful means this May, though?
It's always...
Well, it's not, is it?
It's
Sometimes
non-violent.
it's
We are
stopping people trying to get to work.
That's absolutely committed to non-violence.
No, it also can trip into people not being able to get to work on public transport, such as Canning Town.
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't agree with that action.
So what can be done to ensure?
The people who did it were extremely... they care extremely about the people of London and the effects of climate change that are coming. So that justifies it? Well, you have to look at the context. You act in a way proportionate to the emergency, which doesn't mean becoming violent. We are absolutely committed to non-violence because I think that would backfire hugely.
Right, but you are committed to disruption.
No, if it's a tactic that works, then we are committed to mass disobedience.
So will you seek to take control of bridges again this May?
The tactics haven't been ironed out yet.
Well, would you support it?
I would liaise with the police and see what they had to say about it, and hopefully this time they would communicate with us and we can come to some kind of
So you would support
agreement.
it if your colleagues wanted it?
If it's well, a lot of it depends on what the government does, because if the government continue in investing in fossil fuels, which is going to kill us, then we still need to raise the alarm.
What gives you or your colleagues the right to stop someone going to work?
Well, what does a construction worker... Why does a construction worker,
You said it was a construction worker.
who needs to finish his roadworks, why does he have the right to stop you going to work when he blocks a road to work on
because
the road?
the road's dangerous and they need to fill the hole in. Or
the road's dangerous.
So it's got a hole in it.
This crisis is the most dangerous risk that we are facing.
That justifies you. People lost their jobs last time. Courier companies let men, I happen to know they're all men go. People lost their jobs. You justify that?
We were giving out flyers to couriers when they met us, and we gave them flyers. And we said, please give that to
I don't care if you're
your
giving
boss.
out Girl Guide packs.
We are
People
really
lost
sorry.
their jobs.
I joined the police in 1983. My job has been assessing risk. So when intelligence comes in, I have to work out what is the chance that this is true. Okay? And then I have to work out what are the consequences if it is true. Is it going to be a murder? Is somebody going to die? Is there going to be a rape?
What's this to do with someone losing his job or their job? What's it to do with that?
Because it's the context.
So it's okay.
People get disrupted all the time. They get disrupted by public transport.
Out of work, coming up to Christmas, but that's fine, is it for you? You have some greater authority to put people out of work.
We are looking at our food disappearing. Our potato crop has already been hit.
Mr. Biddle lost a number of limbs in the July bombing here. Yeah. He was due to attend a reception at the House of Lords where he was going to be said his life was going to be celebrated as a prominent disability rights campaigner. Yeah. He couldn't get there because of your colleagues. He'll never have that opportunity again in his life. That's okay, is it?
If he had presented himself, if he'd come and spoken to us, we would have ensured.
What are you now? Your own authority? You're now like the police?
We have a right to be there.
You have to present yourself.
We have a right to be there because we care.
You present yourself to be allowed to go across the highway.
If there was any other choice,
so you take control now. So
if there was any other choice, then we would have used the other methods.
What do you mean if there's any other choice?
Greenpeace have been doing it for years and they haven't got the same exposure as us. If the media was more sensitive to minority groups and important issues...
Talk to me about the success of the LGBT lobby. How did they achieve it?
I have no knowledge of that. I'm not an expert in the LGBT lobby.
Tell me how many people lost their jobs as a result of their work.
I have no idea.
I'll answer it for you. They haven't closed a single bridge and no one's lost their job. They did it by engaging with the community, not obstructing the community. Again, I put it to you, what gives you the right to stop a disabled person getting to an award ceremony? What gives you the right to put 4 people out of work? Please don't say the climate's dying and we won't know no one will have a job and everyone will be disabled. You're not going to give me that, are you?
Well, what's wrong with that? That is true.
So that allows
do you agree in the climate emergency?
So a bloke didn't have money on the table at Christmas and that's all right in your eyes?
No, it's not all right. And this government should do more about social services. That's not all right, definitely. But do you agree with that there is a climate emergency that needs tackling as an emergency right now? Do you agree about that?
Yes, of course. That's absolutely given.
So do you, Nick, think that the government is actually doing their job properly? That they are addressing it fast enough?
Well, they seem to have spent enough time yesterday at that conference. Yes, I do.
Well, they spent a morning.
Well, yeah, but the Prime Minister was there, and goodness me, we're having a whole committee set up. Yes, they are doing a lot.
So you think they're doing enough?
I don't know enough, but they're certainly doing a lot.
So while the main oil companies are investing $115 billion in extracting more oil and gas, which is going to poison us in the future, and our food supply, you think the government are doing enough?
Well, how on earth do you think this research is going to be done unless you have companies such as that who conduct research?
They have to switch to green energy. Have to switch to green energy as soon as possible.
Well, perhaps they are. What's the ultimate goal of Extinction Rebellion?
The ultimate goal is to get the government to tell the truth.
What's funny?
Because we've told you so many times. We have the Three Demands Act. We put a bill before Parliament. You asked me a question. Yeah.
No.
Tell the truth. Act now and beyond politics.
Okay.
So we want citizens' assemblies to dictate what happens in the community.
I don't know how familiar you are with a gentleman called Simon Bramwell.
I've never met him. I know what you're referring to.
He's one of the founders. If you'd like to put the headphones on, we can play you a clip of him. He was addressing a meeting some time ago. Just to remind my listeners.
What meeting was he addressing?
Simon Bramwell was one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion. He was addressing a splinter or another group, and this is what he had to say.
It is part of our duty, in my opinion, that we've also got to not only take down civilization, shepherd ourselves and the incoming generations back into a state of wilding, as it were, into a feral consciousness.
Okay, so he was addressing, if it's important to you, a deep green meeting in December, so the month before last. Take down civilization. This is the reality of it, isn't it, of what this organisation is about?
Deep Green are not Extinction Rebellion.
It's an offshoot of.
They include violent action. We are definitely committed to non-violent action. I have never met him. Could I just come back to you on that recording? He's not with us now, I believe. I've never met him. I've been in since April. I've never met him. And I've never met anybody to express that kind of view.
He's still the co-founder.
Lots of people started this, and for whatever, but I don't really care because I have been in it.
You don't care that he wants to bring down civilization?
I don't care because we have a massive threat facing us.
Right.
That's what I care about. And the people.
So I wanted to. What are we going to do about hospitals?
No, I'd like to read you something that the judge said about Extinction Rebellion. Judge Noble.
Which judge?
Judge Noble.
Right.
He said,
when? I mean, what did you stop it? What's the context?
This was 3 weeks ago in his last trial of Extinction Rebellion, because they only do a certain amount of months. He did scores of Extinction Rebellion people in court. He said, I was fully expecting to see the usual crowd of anarchists and communists and all the dreadful things the Daily Mail say you are. I have to say I've been totally overwhelmed by all the defendants. It is such a pleasure to deal with people so different from all the people I deal with in my regular life. Thank you for your courtesy, your honesty and your integrity. You have to succeed.
Right.
That is what a judge is saying about us.
So it suddenly all changes on the word of one judge. One judge.
Well,
He's the co-founder. He's the co-founder
of somebody I've never met.
Well, it doesn't matter whether you've met him or not.
And definitely is expressing views
Mr.
that I've never heard within Extinction
He's the
Rebellion. I work with doctors. I work with doctors.
If that was the chairman of the Rolls, I might listen.
I work with doctors, A&E doctors.
Okay.
So
when there's no civilization, what will we do with it? We won't have hospitals. We'll all be living in caves again.
That's why I'm out trying to do something about it, to avert this crisis.
That's where Mr. Bratmore wants to take us back to. Take down civilization.
Why are you talking about a man I've never met? I can't give you information about him.
So you can only ever talk about people you meet?
I can only talk about my experience.
Right. So
I don't know this man, and he's not part of Extinction Rebellion. And there he's talking to a group which advocates violence.
He was part of Extinction
Rebellion. So I want
Rebellion.
nothing to do with him if he has those views.
£42 million it cost the police lastly. Yes. £42 million.
Yes.
Money that I'm sure you think could be spent better with your former colleagues and the work they did in Streatham on the weekend. Yes. Again, can you justify that?
I don't think the police should have used that many police. We were overwhelmed with police all the time. We needed a few police liaison officers to liaise with us.
How do you stop your colleagues gluing themselves to the doors of offices and things like that unless you have some coppers about?
What do you think will happen if
why don't you answer
they're
a question?
Stuck to the door?
Why? So it's okay to stick themselves. I see. So people not being able to get in and out of work is okay. So now we've got to get even more people who can't go to work.
Well,
is
usually
that right?
there's back entrances they can go through. Why
should someone have to go through the back door to go to work?
Because there is a massive crisis
this justifies
facing
everything
the world,
in your book, doesn't it?
Well, it shouldn't it? Don't you think? Don't you think it should?
No, what, breaking the law?
Don't you think,
massive No, I don't know. I've just answered you.
Existential crisis.
Do you think it justifies breaking the law?
Justifies non-violent action.
Do you think it justifies breaking the law?
It justifies non-violent action. What individuals do...
Does it justify breaking the law?
What's the most serious thing?
Why do you always answer a question with a question? Does it justify breaking the law?
In certain circumstances.
Really? So you would, and you're the police liaison officer.
And the law...
So I'm sat opposite you, and I'm on the Met side, and I know you're a guy who advocates breaking the law.
That is the dilemma we put to the police, because we believe in necessity. Necessity is an excuse in the law, and we believe we are saving lives by breaking the lowest laws that there are, like Section 14, for example, sitting in the road, criminal damage under £5,000.
Why do you oppose Section 14? Just to remind my listeners, this would, for the purpose of debate, designate Trafalgar Square as an area for protest, and you can have your rallies and your speeches quite rightly, but the roads around Trafalgar Square you are not allowed to intervene so that everyone can keep moving. Why would you oppose that?
What do you mean? Why do I oppose it?
Would you support that? Are you in agreement with the use of Section 14?
I agree that the Section 14 is there and they should use it, yeah.
So you would be happy to do it? So if they were
I'd be happy to do it?
You would be happy to agree with Section 14 for Hyde Park?
It depends on the circumstances.
But what would be against it?
It depends on the circumstances. It depends how many people we've come with. If we've got 40,000 people coming to London, Hyde Park would not be big enough.
Right, OK, so we move you to Twickenham. You'd be satisfied then?
It depends on the circumstances. I can't answer a hypothetical in that.
But you would be supportive of not blocking the roads?
The important thing is, when we go to court, we are arguing a legal issue. A necessity. We are saying it's necessary
human rights as well.
For us to do it, and human rights, but it's necessary for us to do it because people are dying if we don't do it.
But the human rights of people who want to go to work are somehow trumped by the human rights of your
Absolutely, but if
colleagues.
they don't go to work, people don't die.
So your people have to take over Waterloo Bridge or people will die?
I'm glad you're getting it, finally, Nick. I'm glad you're getting it.
Is that what you're saying? People are going to die?
Unfortunately, we've tried every single avenue.
You're already heard of. Everybody knows about you.
Now, but it's only started in...
But if it's you agree they've heard now, we don't need you back in May.
I joined in April. This is a very young organisation, and the government still is not doing enough. They're taking half a step forwards by bringing the
the conference yesterday.
Yeah. You know, the petrol and diesel cars
Yes,
going to be phased
the
out
emissions.
5 years earlier. That's brilliant, but that's half a step forwards, 5 steps backwards. So we need to be honest with the public.
How is
and
that
have
5
a debate.
steps backwards? They brought it forward
Because they
5
have all
years.
those other policies, investing in fossil
The
fuels,
truth
for
is they
example.
could never do enough for you and you or your colleagues.
That's not the truth. That's not true. They could take up the 3 demands bill that we're asking for.
Right, okay.